With its constantly shifting sandbars and powerful currents, the maritime waters along the Jersey shore have long been recognized as being among the most dangerous in the world. The final resting place for over 2,000 ships and vessels. During the 18th and 19th centuries, sailors and sea captains navigated with not much more than a compass and old charts. With danger spots not adequately marked, ships often ran aground and broke to pieces along the Jersey coast. Rescue attempts were often dangerous and disorganized. From the barrier beaches, guns would be fired to signal the mainland, where help would be assembled. They would then row to the island, often in the midst of a dangerous storm, arriving cold and wet before ever reaching the wreck. Shipwrecks cast an eerie gloom over many of those living on the coast. Victims were not just strangers from distant shores, but friends and family as well. Many of those living on the coast relied in one way or another on its waters. Many boats and ships, loaded with oysters, clams, cedar shingles, lumber, or salt hay, went out of the various inlets, never to be heard from again. To aid the crews and passengers on these vessels, district wreck masters were assigned to deal with these disasters. By 1815, volunteer life-saving crews were scattered along the coast, most of them composed of small bands of fishermen. Risking life and limb, they used whatever equipment they happened to own. Boats, ropes, axes, lanterns, while often feeding and sheltering the rescued and burying the dead. In 1848, Congress appropriated $10,000 to provide surf boats and rockets for the protection of life and property along the coast. By the 1850s, 13 government life-saving stations were erected along the shore, from Sandy Hook to Cape May Point. March 15, 1846, is remembered for a horrific storm that left 7 vessels strewn along the beaches of New Jersey. The clipper ship John Minturn ran aground 5 miles south of Squaw Inlet. As dozens gathered, struggling to help in the cold and rain, she yielded to the power of the storm and came apart in the crushing surf. The captain was torn to pieces by the crushing timbers, while most of the passengers and crew were swallowed up in the raging surf. 39 of the 51 aboard the Minturn were reported to have perished. 47 are thought to be lost from all 7 vessels that night. On April 15, 1854, the emigrant transport ship Powhatan got caught in a hurricane-like snowstorm and ran aground near Beach Haven. Slamming against the shoals, she broke apart the next day, claiming 250 to 300 lives, making it one of the most tragic shipwrecks to ever take place on the Jersey shore. For days, bodies washed up on the coast from Pihala to Atlantic City. Later that year, on November 1st, the German emigrant ship New Era, grounded on a sandbar during an angry storm just off the coast of Asbury Park. That night, rescuers could only get close enough to hear the anguished cries for help. The next morning, they were able to reach the wreck, untying a young boy who had been lashed to her mast. Around him hung arms and legs of others who had been lashed in, and whose bodies had been torn away. 132 survived the wreck. 240 were lost. Among those living along the shore were an impoverished and destitute group of men and women called salvagers or wreckers. They lived in makeshift shanties on the beaches, surviving solely on the fish they caught or goods that floated ashore or were taken from vessels that had shipwrecked. There are tales that on Long Beach Island they would hang a lantern around a mule's neck, then lead him up and down the beach in the dark. Mistaking the light of the lantern for that of another ship, the ship's captain believed he had plenty of sea between his ship and land. Suddenly, his boat would have been run aground in the shallows, a welcoming prize for these Barnegat pirates. There is one tale of a wrecker's daughter. While stripping the bodies of the dead of their belongings, she discovered one to be that of her sailor lover. It is said that she still prowls the beaches on dark, stormy nights in search of his forgiveness. In 1865, 13 people drowned off the shores of Atlantic City. Hotel proprietors began putting out fixed safety lines so that beachgoers would have something to cling to as they enjoyed the surf. In 1872, the first lifeguards were hired, paid mainly from the railroads and donations from visitors. By 1884, there were 25 lifeguards who were now employed by the city. Soon, lifeguards were being hired at all the major resorts. By 1874, 40 U.S. Lifesaving Stations were in operation, beginning with number 1 at the tip of Sandy Hook to number 40 on Cape May Point. They were now paid, uniformed, and fully trained in resuscitation and first aid. In the 1890s, the life-saving service began replacing their old stations with new ones, many of which are still in service today. By 1915, it had been incorporated into the new U.S. Coast Guard.